The president said Democrats want to give a gold-plated Medicare program for illegal aliens. That's not true. You can only benefit from the Affordable Care Act, Medicare and Medicaid, if you have legal status in this country.
Which was broadly expanded.
We are not fighting for health care for people who are here illegally. That's not true. We are fighting for health care for America.
Señores, lo que está sucediendo en Fox News es un verdadero circo. Esta cadena que funciona prácticamente como la voz oficial del régimen trumpista se está derrumbando en vivo y en directo, intentando desesperadamente poder defender lo indefendible, el caos absoluto que ha provocado Trump con este cierre de gobierno. El problema es que la gente ya no se traga este cuento. Una encuesta reciente del Washington Post nos muestra que por una diferencia de 17 puntos, los estadounidenses culpan directamente a Trump y a los republicanos MAGA de este desastre. Y bueno, ¿saben de qué habla Fox en medio de todo esto? Pues bueno, en vez de hablar de lo que está sucediendo, hablan una vez más de los jeans de Sydney Sweeney. Increíble. Siguen hablando de los pantalones de una actriz mientras el país se hunde. Veamos ese momento.
I might have him on right now.
But I don't understand this controversy. I mean, you know, she's a talented young actress. She's a beautiful woman. She has good genes from a number of different standpoints, not just the ones that she is wearing. But why people are losing their minds over it is a mystery to me.
Pero bueno, amigos, para poder justificar el tema del cierre de gobierno, invitaron al senador republicano Mike Lee de Utah, junto con Roosevelt, que es el arquitecto del proyecto 2025. Alguien que muy bien sabemos que Trump lo calificó como de renombre. Bueno, este personaje lleva obsesionado desde hace años con la idea de recortar fondos a los estados azules, a los estados demócratas. Así, casi como si fuese una fantasía adolescente. Veamos ese fragmento.
This is what they're doing. They're doing it deliberately. It's going to harm them. Because Russ Vought, the OMB director, has been dreaming about this moment, preparing this moment since puberty. Russ Vought has a plan, and that plan is going to succeed in further empowering Trump. This is going to be the Democrats' worst nightmare, and it's of their own.
Luego aparece Jesse Watters, uno de los principales propagandistas de Fox, diciendo que los demócratas están perdiendo la guerra del mensaje, porque hablan de sombreros y de los videos de inteligencia artificial de Trump. Mentira total. Los demócratas están denunciando que millones de personas van a perder su seguro médico, porque Trump y sus aliados se niegan a extender los subsidios del Obamacare. Y mientras tanto, pues Fox se obsesiona con distracciones baratas. Aquí está la prueba.
And they have so much more to lose. All their pet projects, their windmills, their bureaucrats. And the world keeps spinning during the government shutdown. And people are starting to realize, wait a second, maybe we don't need this big, fat, bloated government. Everything seems to be working fine. The messaging war is embarrassing. All they're talking about is sombreros and healthcare for illegal aliens.
Luego entra el senador demócrata Chris Coons a Fox y, señores, los deja completamente en evidencia. La presentadora intenta empujar esta narrativa de que los demócratas quieren financiar a los inmigrantes indocumentados, pero bueno, él aclara con hechos. Ni un solo dólar del Medicare, del Medicaid o de cualquier otro programa de salud va a inmigrantes ilegales, que eso es totalmente falso. Aquí está el momento exacto.
I was just adding that there are people who came to the country illegally, who got looped in under temporary protection status, who do receive those benefits. And we're going to get into that a little bit deeper in the next. Yes, there are. There are people who have temporary protection status, which makes them, quote, legal. And that's why they're falling under this legal protection, because it was expanded during COVID. And that's, you know, I understand that there's two sides to this argument, but those are the people that are getting argued over right now.
There's not two sides to this argument. The president said Democrats want to give a gold-plated Medicare program for illegal aliens. That's not true. You can only benefit from the Affordable Care Act, Medicare and Medicaid, if you have legal status in this country.
Which was broadly
let's just be clear.
expanded
We are
during
not
COVID.
fighting for health care for people who are here illegally. That's not true.
But they-
we are
okay.
fighting for health care for America.
Y claro, el trasfondo de esta narrativa es brutal. Lo que Fox y Trump sugieren es que si alguien con estatus legal temporal o con un proceso de asilo necesita atención médica, deberían dejarlo morir. O sea, solo imaginen doctores en una sala de emergencia pidiendo papeles en medio de una urgencia vital. Ridículo e inhumano. Incluso Fox ya no puede ocultar lo obvio, que estamos en lo que llaman una farmagedón. Los agricultores están quebrando, porque la guerra comercial de Trump con el mundo ha devastado las exportaciones. Soya, maíz, algodón, todo está siendo aplastado. Y ahora el rescate agrícola podría costar como $50,000 millones. O sea, mucho más que el primero bajo Trump. Es más, aquí lo reconocen en vivo.
Look, 8 years ago, they were our #1 customer. They took almost 40% of our soybeans 8 years ago, and now they take 0.
That's right. In 2018, with President Trump's first round of tariffs on China, at that moment, China was the largest export market for American soy. And they bought 60% of our soybean exports. And they are essentially, exports have collapsed this year, and there are no new orders logged in recent months. And quite frankly, unless something happens to reopen new markets for these farmers, you can't bail people out. That's how much you're going to give them that every year. I mean, you could do that. The tariff revenue is running about, on average in the last couple of months, about $30 billion a month. But do the farmers want welfare? Because that's what it is.
So this is like you're in a trade war, right? And this is the casualty of it now. And so China's using this as leverage because that's how you're going to put pressure on Trump.
Pero claro, Jesse Watters no puede evitar caer en lo más bajo. Comentarios misóginos contra mujeres en televisión nacional, señores. Solo escuchen esto.
The Obamacare bailout, put aside the illegal alien healthcare. This is what this is about. They created this program that was supposed to help people with health insurance, and it quadrupled the price of everything. So they're basically holding the government hostage and making Trump fix a problem that they created. Dana, permission to make an analogy.
No.
Granted.
This is like when your wife forces you to buy an expensive car, and then she just wrecks it over and over again, and it's always stuck in the shop. But she wants to go out, right? But she won't take an Uber. She won't be seen in an Uber. She calls you cheap. So you know what you do? You sit on the couch, you say, fine, babe, I'm just going to sit down, order pizza, and watch football. You're the one that needs to go out and shop and get their nails done. This is a war they cannot win. You're playing chicken with the guy that loves sitting down.
Love your analogies.
Thank you.
I will always grant permission.
Como si fuera poco, luego se lanza con ataques racistas contra la alcaldesa de Los Ángeles, Karen Bass. Escuchen.
Stupid people, it's been famously said, are more dangerous than evil people. Evil people you can confront, expose, and contain. Stupid people, they don't listen to facts, they don't listen to reason, and oftentimes they don't really succumb to force. And so when you get a stupid person that gets a little confidence, that's the worst. That's the most dangerous. And you have to be very careful around stupid people.
Where do you think you fall in that range?
Where do you think, Harold?
That's why they gave him prime time.
Después la cosa, señores, se vuelve absurda. Invitan a alguien que se presenta como un ex miembro de Antifa, algo que por cierto nadie se cree, y también a Brooke Rollins, el cual intenta culpar a Biden porque China dejó de comprar soya. Y eso es absurdo. Para empezar, bajo Biden, más del 50% de las exportaciones de soya iban directamente desde China. Y remata diciendo que Trump es el mejor empresario. Por favor, amigos, Trump es el peor hombre de negocios que ha existido. Heredó fortunas, quebró casinos, acumuló juicios. El único empresario que quebró casinos, literal. Escuchemos lo que dijo Rawlings.
Trump has been vowing to confront China's Xi Jinping about buying American soybeans. When they meet later this month, we're expecting the meeting in Seoul at the end of October. The president wrote on Truth Social, the soybean farmers of our country are being hurt because China is, for negotiating reasons only, not buying American soybeans. I'll be meeting with President Xi of China in 4 weeks, and soybeans will be a major topic of discussion. Secretary, what do you want to see in that discussion over soybeans, and what other agricultural products do you want to see China start buying?
Well, I think there are a couple of really important points here, slightly nuanced. The first one is this, that President Trump is so wholly committed to our farmers, our ranchers, to the American food supply. He understands the importance of being able to feed and fuel ourselves in terms of remaining the world's superpower. And so that's the first point. That's why he's working so hard. We have, I think, more than a dozen deals. Indonesia, Japan, Taiwan, the UK, the EU, Australia, all these countries that up until now we have not been able to get deals with. It's really remarkable. So that's the first point. The second point, and I was with him yesterday in the Oval talking about our row crop farmers specific to soybean, but also sorghum and cotton and corn and wheat. The fact that what unfortunately the Chinese have not held up their end of the deal from the 2019 deal that he struck. And of course, that was according to President Biden, who refused to hold any accountability and as a result abandoned our agriculture community, our farmers especially. That's the second point. But the third point is this, the fact that our chief negotiator, the world's, I believe, greatest businessman is our president right now. He is unwilling to let any of this slide. So yesterday was another marker, I think a line in the sand, if you will, that China needs to stop playing games and that we've got to move forward. And they need our product. It isn't that, you know, they're sitting there with their bins full. They need our product. But the long-term, Maria, the long-term vision, the long-term solution to all of this is that we can't solely rely on just a couple of countries. And that's why he's opening up the markets around the world. And again, I think not just our farmers, but America is headed into this golden age of prosperity that is going to be unprecedented in our history.
Luego aparece el senador republicano Mark Wayne Modding, atacando otra vez al Obamacare y prometiendo un plan mejor. Pero en lugar de proponer algo real, Trump y su gente se la pasan inventando conspiraciones como la de las camas alienígenas que curan enfermedades o las cifras falsas sobre precios de medicamentos, que todo es una mentira. Escuchemos sus disparates.
Maybe this is something for a longer discussion later, but healthcare costs are an issue. People keep talking about it. Obamacare didn't solve it. And now we are in this situation where they think that these temporary COVID-era extensions, they want to have them permanent forever. Do you think it's time for the Republicans to think about figuring out a way to get back to more some free market principles, or at least some plain talk about just how expensive healthcare actually is?
Well, we know Obamacare, affordable health care, didn't work because it made the healthcare prices go through the roof. If we want to solve this issue, how about we use the president that's in office right now, because he's the art of the deal. He knows business, he knows how to negotiate, and he knows what free market can do. If they want to solve the healthcare crisis and actually take care of the American people, then use the business guy that's in office right now. Set away your hatred and your bias towards him, and realize he's the business guy that can maybe be able to help the American people solve this healthcare crisis and bring the free market back into working for the healthcare.
I might be for that. I think that they're for the government solving it, and we were just in Europe. I don't think it's a great idea.
Y finalmente cierran con la congresista Ana Paulina en el show de Waters, celebrando que Trump publique videos con sombreros mexicanos como si fuera algo gracioso. Y mientras ellos se ríen, millones de estadounidenses enfrentan la pérdida de su seguro médico. El 71% de los encuestados apoya extender los subsidios del Obamacare. Pero claro, Fox hablando de sombreros. Escuchen.
And yeah, all of a sudden they're offended by President Trump. But in light of that funny joke, I actually did purchase a red sombrero that I hope that President Trump and J.D. Vance will wear during the celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month later on this month.
All right.
Ahí lo tienen, amigos. Mientras Fox se hunde en distracciones y propaganda barata, la realidad es clara. Donald Trump y los republicanos están destruyendo la economía, el sistema de salud y hasta el futuro de millones de familias. Pero bueno, señores, estamos frente a este cierre de gobierno que muchos ya se dan cuenta, ¿no? Es provocado directamente por Trump y los republicanos. Pero lo peor de todo esto es que mientras millones de familias en Estados Unidos están sufriendo las consecuencias, Donald Trump sigue dedicándose a hacer shows con videos manipulados y actitudes muy poco serias. El líder demócrata de la Cámara de Representantes, Hakeem Jeffries, no se cayó y le puso nombre y apellido a los culpables de este desastre. Lo llamó como lo que es, un cierre republicano, un cierre de Trump. Lo más fuerte, dijo que Trump está desquiciado y poco serio, y que sabe perfectamente que él es el responsable. Antes de que vayamos a mi análisis, quiero que veamos juntos qué fue lo que dijo Hakeem Jeffries en esta entrevista. Escuchemos.
Start this hour in Washington, D.C., where the federal government remains shut down today amid a tense standoff over federal funding. House Minority Leader, Democratic Congressman Hakeem Jeffries is standing by with the Democrats' position and to respond to House Speaker Mike Johnson, who said this moments ago.
We're in day 3 of the shutdown because 44 Senate Democrats have decided to reject the very simple, very clean, very conventional continuing resolution that we passed in the House to keep the government open. There's a lot of negotiations going on here between the parties about appropriations, about how to spend federal dollars, and that is the regular process. But we ran out of time because we came to September 30th, the end of the fiscal year. We just needed to buy about 7 weeks on the calendar to finish the process. This happens all the time. It happened 13 times during the Biden administration, and Republicans never voted to shut the government down. But now the Democrats have flipped the script, and they've decided to close it, and real people are being harmed. We've got to bring this to an end.
Okay, Leader Jeffries joins us now. Mike Johnson, the Speaker, says real people are being harmed. This has to come to an end. Your response, also anything new? Any possibilities a deal could be reached today and the government reopens?
Well, good morning. We're in day 3 of the Trump Republican shutdown because Republicans don't want to provide health care to working class Americans. We know that real people are being hurt, and that unfortunately has been the case since the beginning of the Trump administration on January 20th. It was Speaker Johnson, Republicans in the House and the Senate, along with Donald Trump and the administration, who passed this one big ugly bill that set in motion the health care crisis that the American people are dealing with right now. Largest cut to Medicaid in American history. They ripped food from the mouths of hungry children, seniors, and veterans, and all of that was done so that they could provide massive tax breaks to their billionaire donors. Now, they don't want to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for everyday Americans, and that's shameful.
Okay, so in a perfect world, you know, this would be about the continuing resolution, about a debate about policy, a debate about health care. There wouldn't be disinformation and lies about this is about migrants getting health care that the Democrats want. And there wouldn't be Project 2025 aspirations. But I don't think Democrats can look at this shutdown in a vacuum. The threat of mass firings is as real as the threat of retribution and the threat of ICE raids and deportations. It's real. So since some who study Project 2025, and we've had them on the show earlier now, say the administration is really hoping for a moment like this, so they can have these mass firings and weaken the government. Let's say 3 or 4 Democrats break and Republicans get what they want, avoiding these mass firings. What are the consequences for the American people if Republicans get what they want?
Well, listen, we're ready, willing, and able to sit down with anyone, anytime, at any place in order to have a conversation about reopening the government, enacting a spending agreement that meets the needs of the American people in terms of their quality of life and addresses the Republican health care crisis. And we've maintained that position for weeks. Republicans, unfortunately, have shown no interest in doing anything responsible to address the health care crisis that they've created because they want to continue to wreak havoc on the American people. And the reality is, during the duration, the entirety of the Trump administration, I think we're on day 2 157 of the chaos that has been unleashed on the American people, they have already engaged in mass firings. They've done this outside of the context of a government shutdown. They've already unleashed mass ICE agents on law-abiding immigrant families. They've done that outside of the context of a government shutdown. They've already enacted this massive tax break for their billionaire donors while taking health care away from more than 14 million Americans. Enough already. This is who they are. And the government shutdown is just a continuation of that effort.
So Leader Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader Thune has said in recent days that, he says anyway, Republicans would be willing to negotiate on ACA, but doing it separately from the government funding situation. And that was something that Minority Leader Schumer agreed with back in the spring. So if that does come to the table, if that's a real offer here, hey, let's talk about ACA, let's fund the government short term, and then let's deal with ACA now, and then revisit the government down the road, is that something Democrats would be interested in?
Our position is cancel the cuts, lower the costs, save health care. And that has to be done at this moment in time in the context of this unprecedented Republican assault on the health care of the American people. Largest cut to Medicaid in American history, triggering a possible $536 billion cut to Medicare at the end of this year if Congress doesn't act because of what Republicans did in their one big ugly bill. We know that hospitals and nursing homes and community-based health clinics all across the country, including in rural America, are closing down right now because of the Republican assault on the health care of everyday Americans, and they refuse to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, which is going to result in more than 20 million Americans receiving notices, many that have already gone out, indicating that their health care premiums, copays, and deductibles are about to skyrocket. And we already live in a high cost of living environment. America's too expensive. Donald Trump hasn't lowered costs on day one, which he promised. They're making life more expensive. That's why this has to be dealt with, as Dr. King once observed, with the fierce urgency of now.
So, Leader Jeffries, it's, I guess, a very 2025 thing that we're dealing with this. But as part of these negotiations, apparently a feature AI-themed videos that President Trump is sending out of you. One the other day, in which you're featuring wearing a sombrero and a mustache, and you alongside Senator Schumer saying, things that you did not actually say. And then one posted overnight where President Trump, with a Trump 2028 hat, which he did actually have on his desk in your meeting with him, he threw it in this video on your head and laughed. Can you just talk to us about what that meeting was like with the President of the United States, and, what is your response to these antics here at a moment when the government is shut down?
Well, it's further confirmation that Republicans are the ones who were clearly determined to shut the government down, because everything that President Trump has done subsequent to Monday has been unhinged and unserious. In fact, Donald Trump is in the Presidential Witness Protection Program. No one can find him when it comes to the government shutdown issue, because he knows he's responsible for having caused it. And the behavior, the erratic behavior that we've seen is further confirmation of that unfortunate fact. Yet, as Democrats, Leader Schumer, myself, House Democrats, Senate Democrats, we've been clear. Listen, we'll sit down in good faith. We need to reopen the government in this Trump Republican government shutdown, and we can find a bipartisan path toward a spending agreement. But that spending agreement has to actually meet the needs of the American people in terms of their health, their safety, and their economic well-being, particularly as it relates to driving down the high cost of living and lowering health care costs, as opposed to driving millions of Americans into medical bankruptcy because of the Republicans' refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits.
Leader Jeffries, hey, Heilman here. So this is, I want to ask about the politics of this, right? There's people talk about this as a game of chicken. Really is a game of chicken. It's really between the kind of moderates in each party. Who's going to blink first? And especially with these very narrow margins that we're talking about in the House and the Senate. In terms of the Democrats in your caucus, how confident are you in the solidarity, the unity, the cohesion of your members in the House? And then tell me whether you are as confident about that in terms of the Senate Democratic caucus.
Yeah, House and Senate Democrats are united, and House Democrats within our own caucus are definitively united as it relates to standing up for the health care of the American people and fighting to address this health care crisis that Republicans have addressed or created as part of this broader challenge where the cost of living environment in the United States of America it's out of control. And Donald Trump, despite all of his promises, is making it worse. The Trump tariffs are making things worse, thousands of dollars in additional expenses. So this is the right substantive fight on behalf of the American people for us to have, and that's what unites Democrats in the House and in the Senate.
I believe you about House Democrats, okay? But we saw in the last time we did this, we went through this dance, you saw Leader Schumer decide to give the Republicans the votes to keep the government open. You've seen 2 Democrats in the Senate Democratic Caucus already vote to keep the government open, Senator Fetterman and Senator Cortez Masto. You're now hearing talk about Jeanne Shaheen starting to float the possibility of making a deal. So I'll ask you again, why is it different? Why are you so confident, or why are you saying you're so confident that the Senate situation is different this time around when, at least to my eye, you can already start to see some kind of cracks potentially emerging on that side of Capitol Hill in your party?
Well, when you think about what Republicans have done over the last several months, particularly as it relates to their one big ugly bill and the devastation that has been caused with respect to the health care of the American people, House and Senate Democrats were entirely united. Every single House Democrat voted against that toxic piece of legislation, and so did every single Senate Democrat. And we've been working in lockstep since that moment, regularly in communication across the...
Ahí lo tienen. Aquí Jeffries lo deja clarísimo. Donald Trump no solo es responsable de este cierre de gobierno, sino que su comportamiento errático es la prueba más evidente de que no está actuando con seriedad. Tiene toda la razón. Porque mientras millones de estadounidenses están enfrentando la posibilidad de perder el acceso a la salud, ver cómo suben sus seguros médicos o cómo se paralizan los servicios básicos, Donald Trump anda más preocupado por inventarse videos con inteligencia artificial solo para burlarse de sus oponentes. Señores, esa es la definición de un político que no entiende o no quiere entender el peso de sus actos. Y ojo, algunos republicanos intentan decir que esto es culpa de los demócratas, que ellos no aprobaron una resolución limpia, pero esa narrativa se cae sola. Los mismos republicanos fueron quienes aprobaron recortes brutales al Medicaid, al Medicare y a los programas esenciales. ¿Y todo esto para qué? Para poder favorecer a sus amigos millonarios, los donantes. Eso no es negociar, eso es chantajear a la gente común con salud y con futuro. Incluso, si es que alguien quisiera defender a Trump diciendo que esto pasa siempre o que los demócratas también han hecho lo mismo en el pasado, la diferencia es abismal. Ningún presidente moderno ha utilizado un cierre de gobierno como un juego personal de poder al nivel que lo hace Trump. Y ahí está la prueba. No ofrece soluciones, sigue ofreciendo caos. Lo que dice Hakeem Jeffries es muy importante, señores. Conecta los puntos. La estrategia republicana no es solo sobre números o presupuestos, es parte de un plan mucho más grande. Que este plan viene desde el principio de este segundo mandato, que es desmantelar servicios públicos, debilitar al Estado, beneficiar a unos pocos. Y mientras tanto, Trump se esconde, sabiendo que él mismo empujó al país a este abismo. La pregunta es sencilla, señores. ¿Qué tipo de liderazgo es este? Uno que, en lugar de buscar acuerdos para proteger al pueblo, se dedica a sembrar caos, manipulación y burla. Pero bueno, quiero saber qué opinan ustedes. ¿Ustedes creen que Trump realmente entiende el daño que está causando con este cierre de gobierno? ¿O simplemente no le importa? Porque pues todo lo ve como un espectáculo para su base. Los leo en los comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme en este video. Recuerden, como siempre, déjame tu like, comparte el contenido y suscríbete al canal. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.